So hello everyone, in this video we'll be talking about the backend frameworks and how should we choose them, because there are many backend frameworks, and while working and while in the development we kind of get confused that which type of backend framework should we use when we are creating an application. So let's start this lesson. So first let's understand what is a backend actually. So a backend is nothing but a server-side code which is responsible for handling and managing storage, database, and other resources. Basically, when we create a web application at that time or a normal application, whenever we create an application, there is a backend side of that application. The front-end side user can easily access and view whatever we want to show that. And for example, in a web application, whatever the user sees in the web or in a website, for example form, buttons, everything that is a front end. And whenever we submit that data, and that data goes to somewhere and stores that in a database, so that background process or a business logic that happens in the background which user cannot see is actually the backend. So backend is a server-side code which is responsible for managing our storage and database and other resources. So basically, backend is called the data access layer of software. So a software has a data that can be accessed only with the help of a server. So that is a backend. So for managing that backend, for managing backend resources, we actually use frameworks. And what are some top backend frameworks? These are some. The first one is the Django, which is a Python framework. The next one is the Node.js or ExpressJS. ExpressJS is built on Node.js, so we can think of it as Node.js. So Node.js is JavaScript framework for the backend. And third one is the Laravel, which is a PHP framework for the backend. Then there is Spring Boot and then .NET. .NET has two frameworks. One is .NET Core and a normal .NET framework. We'll discuss that in the later slides. So actually all these frameworks are there, but what should we use and when should we use over the others? So when should we use Django, the Node.js, Laravel? What are the advantages of all these? So let's understand that. So the first one is Django. Django is a leading open source backend framework based on the Python programming language. It follows the model view controller pattern, which we generally use in modern application while building that. So Django is basically the Python framework. If you know the Python, then that is your best friend if you are jumping in the backend development. Django is suitable for the development of sophisticated and feature-rich database-driven websites. If you want more features in your websites, then you can choose this one, Django. And it is one of the easiest backend frameworks because it is written in Python, and Python is a very easy language to use. This backend framework facilitates optimal pluggability, reduced coding, greater usability, and faster development. So all these are the features of Django because Django is written in Python. That's why some time is reduced while coding, because some of the things are which are repeated in general programming languages that are reduced in this. So it doesn't use those curly brackets and semicolons because that's removed in Python. That's why some of the features are pre-built also in Django. It uses Python for all operations in Django and provides an optional admin interface to help create, read, update, and delete operations. So it also provides an admin interface pre-built for the application to manage and create and update all the CRUD operations, basically uh, for managing the resources. So the Django is that. When to use Django? So actually Django is a very great framework when you are working in web development, but there are some things when we are using this we should consider. Since Django is based on Python, it supports powerful machine learning libraries like PyTorch, NumPy. These are machine learning libraries. Its computational and statistical capabilities make it the ideal platform for machine learning application. So if you want to build machine learning applications, then definitely Django is the best framework to use, because Python is already rich with AI and data science related libraries. So you can easily use that in web application as well if you use that Django framework. When should we not use Django actually? So we should not use Django for smaller projects with only a few features and requirements, because it's a batteries included framework. It has so much boilerplate code which small projects don't need, as a result consuming unnecessary server processing time and bandwidth. So there are a lot of pre-built things in Django. So when your project is a little bit smaller, so you should not use Django, because some of the boilerplate or the pre-built code is already there, and it increases the processing time of your application, and it also increases the size of your application. That is not good for the production if your application is a little bit smaller, because those features will not be used in the smaller projects. So that's not the sense to use the Django for smaller projects. So the second framework is Node.js or ExpressJS. ExpressJS, also known as Express, is a Node.js web application framework because it is built on Node.js, an open source software available under the MIT license. It is used for building APIs and web applications, and it is considered as a standard Node.js server framework. Means ExpressJS is basically built on Node.js to reduce some of the uh, nitty-gritty things in Node.js, because Node.js uses we can create a server by using Node.js, but ExpressJS provides us more helpful way and more easier way to create servers, and for creating APIs we use ExpressJS. So Node, it is built on Node.js actually, and all these JS you kind of get the idea that it is actually the JavaScript. So this is a JavaScript framework we use for backend development or free for creating APIs in the backend. Node.js uses asynchronous programming, meaning it is non-blocking. It will not block the code, or it will not wait for one code to execute and return the result. Instead, it will jump to the next code and it will come back to the previous code again, and then it will get the data and pass to that. In other words, it does not wait for a resource to finish the job. It is immediately ready to take up the next request and gives a callback when it's done. Node.js runs like a rocket and it is very scalable. So we can easily use it because it is very scalable and good for backend development when there are heavy IO or input output operations are there. So when to use Node.js? When your application is highly event driven and performs lots of IO operations, input output operations. Also when you have to make various API calls from the backend itself. Here in this scenario, you can leverage its non-blocking feature, because whenever there are a lot of requests made to backend, at that time sometimes backend gets frustrated and we didn't get the expected results. So whenever your application is having a lot of backend operations or a lot of backend API calls, at that time you should use Node.js, because Node.js has a feature of a non-blocking, which means asynchronous feature, asynchronous, and that will not block your code or request, but instead it can handle multiple requests at the same time. So that's why Node.js is used for that particular situation. We can use that for. Also, we can use for other parts as well, but this is the best approach to use Node.js. When not to use Node.js, when should we not use it? Actually, when you have a heavy algorithm or a job that consumes lots of CPU cycles, because Node.js runs on a single thread, just like client-side JS, your application will be very inefficient for CPU intensive jobs. So when your application requires a lot of CPU cycles, at that time you should not use Node.js. Or whenever your application requires heavy computing in the sense, so that time you should not use Node.js, because Node.js runs on a single thread and it manages all the things in that single thread by using asynchronous callbacks. So basically at that time we should not use it, because at that time if we use Node.js, so that will make our application very inefficient. So we should not use it for heavy intensive CPU tasks or CPU intensive applications. The third one is the Laravel, which is an open source PHP framework. It follows an MVC architecture, just like the other one. Laravel makes life easier as it has so many developer friendly features. One of them is Query Builder or ORM. Before Laravel, it seemed like PHP is dying, but now it is one of the competitive frameworks. There is one more framework called Cake PHP that we aren't talking about. That is also one PHP framework, but Laravel is moreover the good one. So Laravel is the framework for PHP. Basically, it also has some uh, features for developers. So just like the query builder, it has a query builder and that builds the queries easily. Laravel also provides its user with multiple ways of accessing relational databases, along with application maintenance and deployment utilities. As we know that PHP is a great framework when we are working with relational databases. So Laravel is, you can say, the superset of PHP, and that's why Laravel also gives some accessibility to relational databases as well for application maintenance. So Laravel is, you can say, the evolved version of PHP. You can easily use that because it is very popular in nowadays. When to use Laravel? When the time to market is the key, then Laravel is the best choice because it has so many salient features that make web development very fast as compared to other frameworks out there. Also, Laravel can be hosted on a shared hosting, thus making it cheapest amongst all. So when time and cost is the key, you should go with Laravel. Definitely, if we are working on an application which requires a less amount of money or less amount of task in CPU amount, then at that time you can use Laravel because it will be the cheapest to host the application built with Laravel, and it has many developer friendly features as well, as we told you in the last slide. When not to use Laravel? We should not use Laravel when there is like security related uh, problems. Like when you want to make your application secured, at that time you should not use Laravel because Laravel is basically the PHP, and it is not secure as compared to Spring and Node.js because we can easily hack this application by using SQL injections and other cross-site scripting attacks, and it adds an extra layer of security to it. In Spring and Node.js we have that, but we don't have in this. But still, PHP is never recommended for applications where security is a must. When you want to build an application which is for banking, for example, when the security is the concern, then at that time you should not use PHP or any framework using PHP. The fourth one is the Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a powerful, lightweight, and most popular framework which makes Java quicker, easier, and safer to use. Basically, it is a Java web development framework. Spring Boot helps you to build production-ready Spring-based applications. So it is basically used for bigger application or enterprise level applications. It serves 80% of everyone's needs for a modern web development. It is highly useful for creating standalone production grade applications with minimum effort. Users can also use many extensions for creating web apps based on the Java EE platform. It also has many extensions for creating web apps. When to use Spring Boot? When your primary focus is security, maybe you want to write banking or financial applications where you cannot compromise with security, Spring Boot will be the best choice. So Spring Boot is basically using Java, and we know Java is very secure language and it uses all the object oriented concepts, so which makes it very secure in nature, and it is very like you can say extensive application. When you want to build an application which is very big, at that time definitely you should use Spring Boot. As Java supports multi-threading out of the box, it becomes a great choice for building complex and highly concurrent web applications. When not to use Spring Boot, it is just like Django. We should not use Spring Boot when there are small projects, when it is a very small project and you are using Spring Boot. It will be like you are cutting nails with a sword. So that is the thing. Like you should not use Spring Boot, which is a very great or very extensive framework for building small applications. It will be just like overkilling that application actually. The only thing for saying no to Spring Boot is that it's a bit complex and requires a lot of expertise, because it requires expertise in Java, and we cannot use Spring Boot without the expertise in Java, because Java is very complex language. If you say that it is hard to understand, but it is worth it. Means you should use it when there is actually need of that, because it is actually needed in bigger application or enterprise grade applications. So at that time you should definitely use Spring Boot, but not for the small projects or small applications. That will be not good for that. So Spring Boot will be the best one for bigger applications. And the fifth one is the ASP.NET. The ASP.NET Core, there is one more ASP.NET framework, and this one is the ASP.NET Core. ASP.NET Core is kind of like the .NET framework, but it is a little bit lighter in size. So that's why, and it is a little bit faster as well. So ASP.NET Core is an open source and free framework that follows in the footsteps of ASP.NET, a widely used backend created in partnership with the .NET Foundation. ASP.NET Core is a modular framework that can run across the entirety of the .NET framework across on Windows and .NET Core. It uses C sharp programming language, so you don't have to actually like understand all these things, but just understand that ASP.NET is like a framework of C sharp for building cross-platform application, or basically it is used for web applications backends, but we can use it for building a cross-platform application as well. With ASP.NET Core, you can build web apps and services, Internet of Things, IoT apps, and mobile backends. So all these backends can be created by using ASP.NET Core. When to use ASP.NET actually? So when we have when we want a faster application for various platforms, for different platforms, and we want an enterprise level app development, then you should definitely use ASP.NET. So that will be best if you use for bigger application just like the other ones. And if you want to create application for different platforms, then you should consider this ASP.NET. And it also costs you a lot, because we should not use it for smaller projects which requires less cross-platform nature or enterprise grade features. So at that time you should not use this. When not to use ASP.NET? Let's answer this question. When you want to create a simple but not an enterprise level app, as I told you, and not a cross-platform app, then you should not use .NET framework. So it is basically just like the Spring Boot. It is very good, and it is basically used for enterprise level or enterprise grade applications, and it costs very much because enterprise level applications are bigger in nature, and at that time we cannot risk, and it also requires some expertise in C sharp as well. So that's why we should not use it for simple and smaller projects. So I think this is the end of the video. I hope you understood something about all these different frameworks. You got some idea that when should we use one framework over the other ones, and when should we not. Basically all the frameworks are good, but it depends on you that on which platform you want to use that, or what is your expertise in any of the programming language which I discussed. All these frameworks are upon you. So whenever you need whenever you get certain type of situation, at that time you should definitely use that particular framework. So, and if you are expert in that, like if you are expert in multiple technologies, so you can definitely learn all these. But I hope we should always stick into one place, and we should not move around all the other places. One is the killer one, so we should not like distract to other frameworks if they have some features. So they might have some disadvantage as well. So we should be best in multiple technologies, but we should not lose focus by that. So that is my main point here. So this is the end. Thank you for watching. Let's meet in the another one.